Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming at you again for yet another Film Fanatic video, another bonanza. A lot to talk about today. It is Saturday at about 10:53. Uh, Not looking really good weather-wise today. It's supposed to rain, I guess, later on this afternoon. It's pretty overcasty. Yet another cold day. Super strange. The weather was pretty nice yesterday. It did get pretty chilly last night, though. But the weather was nice. It was a pretty clear day, but it was definitely chilly. It was definitely jacket jackets were required and layers. So, but hey, anyway, it was the start. Yesterday was the start, or I should say, it technically started Thursday night. I think they had an opening party for it. But the All Roads Festival is going on right now as we speak. This weekend, it started late Thursday. I believe, they had an opening thing Thursday night at Marshall Wharf, and then it kicked off again on Friday, where they had the official start, and they had bands that. The start time, I think, for most of the bands was about 4:30, 5 o'clock yesterday, and we were really excited. My band Quantum, we got picked to play this year, so I was very excited to play at this festival. We haven't really done too many festivals. I mean, we have done. I mean, we've done lots of shows over the years, and I used to do a festival. Uh, I did it about 3 years in a row, and a couple of the years it was really big. I did this festival called the Feedback Festival that I ran in Belfast, and that was really great. And we've done a few other shows where we've had lots of other bands on the bills, like more so early on in our kind of career as a band as Quantum. And we've done a few festivals, lots of house parties, and things of that nature, and lots of, like, gigs at clubs and bars and restaurants, and we've got some touring experience in our in our background. And for a while it was cool. We were going on the road a lot, and that was probably after the first uh, 2 years or so that the band had started. We were playing in New York City a lot, and going down on these little mini tours. We would go to Canada, Montreal. Montreal was one of the greatest places. That's probably my favorite place that we've ever played at. For our band Quantum. But it's always been a fun adventure. You just never know how things are going to go. It's always kind of wacky. It's always kind of crazy, but it's fun, and it's like, I've always felt like with this band, you know, if an opportunity presents itself, just kind of go for it. I don't feel like, I never feel like I have much to lose. Just kind of go for it, because sometimes you have gigs and things don't really connect. Maybe the audience is like not really into your music, or you're put in a situation where it's been a thing of where, when we were playing gigs, we used to have this residency at Fog Bar in Rockland, and you know we had to really adjust to those gigs, because it was a 3 hour set, and the first hour or so of the show we would be playing while people were dining and eating, so we'd have to, like, really watch our volume, and also try to reevaluate how we do our sets, and it was tough at first, but then again, after we did that for a while, it ended up being really great, because our sound changed and morphed into lots of different things. I've always been a huge fan of Brian Eno and ambient music and film soundtracks. So when we started doing lots of those gigs, aside from doing, like, maybe the heavier dance stuff, we started to write more in that vein, and I started having a lot of material that was more ambient kind of based, minimalist kind of stuff. So we started playing a lot of that stuff for those kinds of gigs, and it was really great because we learned a lot. We ended up acquiring a lot of material that was kind of more in that vein also, or with that, you know, the more ambient kind of chill stuff, along with the heavier dance stuff, or the darker music that we have. So it was a really cool thing for us to do, and it helped us broaden, hopefully, broaden our palette a little bit, and kind of our whole like approach. And ever since that gig, we have, I like to think we have a lot of diversity to our sound. We are an electronic band, but again, influenced by so many different things that are not necessarily electronic music. So I noticed, like, after that experience, when we would starting to play other gigs and getting more experience, wherever we were able to adjust, or hopefully trying to adjust to what the vibe was in the room, what the space was like, what the energy was like. We even played gigs where we played these tiny little coffee houses. Like one place in particular was Zoot Coffee in Camden, which is now a bigger space, but at the time when we were playing there, it was super tiny, like a shoebox. So I don't know, we were able to play places like that, little coffee places, and then we've had opportunities to play like really large venues and big outside, kinds of shows, and so being able to adjust to that, and then if people are eating or people are like casually listening to what we're doing, or if there's nobody at all really interested in what we're doing, or if there's like a kind of a dance party kind of atmosphere, you know that's one of the things with what we try to do, and what I try to do is to really try to focus on kind of the energy of what's going on in that room. But then also us as a band, hopefully, we all have good nights and bad nights. We've had shows where I feel like I'm not playing very well, I'm not in the zone, and then we have shows where things are really electric. And part of it is just being able to adjust. But I really think it's up to the band or the performers to kind of create that vibe or create that energy on stage. A lot of the time, sometimes musicians and bands, won't really give it their all per se if like nobody's responding to their music and nobody's really, reacting to what's going on. And I totally understand it because I've been in that place a lot. And but I also feel like I kind of switched that mindset a lot over the years, where I feel like wherever you're playing and whatever's going on, you're trying to bring that energy, even if it's, say, the more mellow ambient stuff. You're still trying to bring that energy, and I think it's up to the bands, and those performers to kind of create that vibe, and then maybe people will latch onto it or not. But I think it starts with the band and the performers. But anyway, we played last night at Marshall Wharf, and we went on about 9:30 last night. We were the first band out of three bands, and it was super fun. The sound guy and the sound setup was pretty incredible. It felt like the energy was pretty incredible last night, and so I really want to thank Meg Charette for having us there, and it was a wonderful time, and the rest of the bands were terrific. It was terrific. It was a wonderful night, and we get to do it all over again today. We were playing at 4 o'clock today. It's an early show, and we're playing at the Maskers Theater. Probably going to be a very different environment. We did go, me and my friend Mike, who plays bass in Quantum, we did go to the festival early yesterday, just kind of checked out a bunch of things that were going on. And we went to this space at the Maskers, this new venue, and it's a gorgeous venue. So we'll see how things go. We're going to be playing right after a punk band, so Random Ideas. So, yeah, it's been a fun adventure. And, really thank everybody for their support. Saw some friends that came out, some people that I've known that have been really supportive of this band since its inception. So it was very nice to see. And The other thing that's coming up is on Monday, a brand new band that I just started with some friends called Blind Owl, which is a really fun band. It's with a couple of really great friends. It's a power trio. And I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I kind of think of the music as like surf rock meets punk rock, indie rock, kind of a thing. And it's all original music. And this whole thing just came up pretty last minute, but we're going to be playing our first gig as a band in Rockland Monday night at the Lincoln Street Center in Rockland, Maine. There's a there's an art opening there. There's going to be people, I guess, showing some short films and then also doing some art presentations. So, and then we're going to be playing after that at like I think at um, 8:30 or so. So that's tomorrow. That's going to be on Monday. So, kind of excited. That's a brand new band. We have not. This will be our first gig ever, and we started playing early in the winter, probably like February or so of this year. And it didn't, it came out of just us, just basically a group of people becoming friends, hanging out, talking about music, and drinking some beer. And we found we had a lot of the same interests. And then from that, we started jamming. And then that went on for quite a few months. And we've been in the habit of like rehearsing every week. And over a period of a few months, you know, wasn't even all that long ago, we realized, wait, I think we have a band. Like we have pretty good amount of material now, and it's all original stuff and super fun. So if you're in the Rockland area tomorrow, sorry, on Monday, come on by. It's a free show, and yeah, we'll see how things go. It'll be the first time for us to test run this whole crazy new band that we have, and it's all original music, which is really cool. So one other thing that happened to me last night that I just thought was super hilarious and kind of sad and maybe pathetic, but just I thought fucking hilarious. We got done playing. We did our set with Quantum, and I was hanging out with some folks, and I met a bunch of really cool people last night, and saw some friends, and we got done. We there were two other bands after us, so we stayed till the to the end. I packed up everything at the end of the night, so it was great. And a lot of cool people came up to us and really liked the music and gave me some really nice compliments. So that was really cool. One of the funniest thing and the kind of the weirdest or strangest thing that happened to me, or I don't know, just hilarious. This one girl who I saw at the show last night, I ran into her. I was going up earlier. I think it was right after we got done. I was going to go up for a beer or something, and this girl was standing there with like a group of these other girls that looked like they were barely 21. I would say they were probably just 21. And and I accidentally kind of bumped into her, and I was like, "Oh, excuse me, sorry," and she turned around and she's like, "Oh, no problem" or something, because it was at that point there was a lot of people there, and she turned back at me and she's like, "Oh, I know you just played," and she said some really nice things, and then a couple other people she was with, they all said, "Oh, you really liked your music," so we talked for a few minutes, and that was really cool. And then like probably about a half hour later, one of the bands, Bait Bag, who is this awesome all girl band from North Haven. They were like kind of the headlining band, and I was standing there watching them, and people were dancing, and it was great. It was totally awesome. And that same girl I noticed was on the side of me, standing next to me, and she came up to me, and she's like, "Can I ask you an important question?" And I was like, "Sure." And she's like, "Do you mind if I ask you an important question? It's kind of personal." And I was like, "I don't care." I was like, I don't, whatever, it's fine." And she's like, "Well, I have this thing with my friends, and my friends are guessing your age, and then I took a guess at your age. So I'm just curious how old you actually are." And I was like, okay, that's hilarious, but sure. And I was like, so then I asked her, what did your friends, or your friend, this girl that you're friends with, what was her guess? What did she, how old did she think you were? And she said, oh, well, they thought you were like 63, 64. And I'm just like, what? I'm 47. And I'm like, and she's like, well, I thought you were closer to like 45. And I was like, they're wrong. And I'm like, gee, thanks. So it was pretty fucking funny, I thought. Apparently some 21-year-old girl in the audience thought I was 63. So I was like, yeah, that fucking rules. So, but anyway, great times, and gonna go to the festival earlier today. There's a bunch of cool music that's going on all day and into the night tonight, and then we have a show at 4. So yeah, really looking forward to a whole another day of really cool original music. So today's show is on a movie that is a iconic, without a doubt, an iconic classic. A movie, yet again, another show on a movie that has been talked about and discussed for years and years and years since it's come out. And, it's always those things of when I think of a movie that I consider a classic that happens to be very popular, or a movie that is very well respected, or, is always on, say, someone's top 10 or top 20 list. I'm always like, at first, a little bit reluctant, because I'm always like, well, what else can I add to the conversation? It's been talked about already, to the point of where what else can be said to it? Can be said about it? Because, the main focus of this channel is to talk about a lot. Most of the videos and movies that I cover on this show are movies that are not very talked about. But these, again, movies in general mean so much to me, so it doesn't really matter if they're, for me, if they're popular or not, or if people talk about them a lot or they don't at all. I do have that focus and that intention with this channel to mostly talk about movies that I don't hear talked about at all. But again, outside of that, it doesn't really matter. So that's usually how I think about things, and as far as like what I'm going to do for a future video. So today's show is on the one and only The Terminator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course. This is a Blu-ray version. I got this probably about 3 years ago or so, and this edition is super badass. It comes with all kinds of special features. I can't remember where I got this. I don't know. I'm not sure where I got this. I have no idea. I can't remember. I don't think I bought it. I don't know if Santa Claus bought it for me for Christmas. I don't think I bought this at Bull Moose. I don't believe I did. And I might have gotten this at Goodwill, but I can't remember. But this is this is one of my all-time favorite sci-fi action movies of all time. Some people have called this movie a slasher film. There's a guy, Cody Leach, who is a YouTube guy who I like, and I watch his channel quite a bit. He mostly covers a lot of newer films, so I like to check out a lot of newer things. And a lot of the times I missed a boat a little bit, so I watch his show for that. And he did a show on this iconic movie, and he referred to this movie as more or less like a classic slasher film, which is, I I can see that, and I kind of agree with that, but I also feel it's kind of a stretch, you know. Yeah, it's got this guy who Schwarzenegger, who is essentially a homicidal maniac who's going around to, to random people and just, you know, killing off all of these people in all kinds of brutal ways. And, you know, and essentially that's kind of something, obviously, that is a part of the slasher genre. But I don't know, the reason I don't really consider this to be a slasher film is probably because of the world that this movie is set in, and the uh, kind of the world building aspect of it, where it's set in the future. It's a heavy duty sci-fi epic, and it's got a really great story. It's got an amazing action, and I just look at this as being just one of the greatest science fiction movies of all time. The slasher thing, like, I think of a slasher. My favorite slasher film of all time is Maniac, which I've talked about a lot, and I've done a show. I've done a show. Did a show on Maniac last year, and I've talked about that movie a lot. And that's my favorite slasher movie of all time. And it's so, it's I don't really feel like it fits into that category because of, you know, typically slasher films for me are pretty low budget or very low budget. They're super sleazy. There is always that scenario of really good kills. There's always a group of teenagers that are, you know, in a setting of, like, say, a cabin in the woods or some isolated area, and they're getting picked off one by one by a masked killer. And there's always some kind of element of where it's really raw, and it's kind of dirty, and it is slightly, might have a little bit of a cheesy factor to it, like, or a little bit of a bad quality to it, where maybe the editing isn't so great, or the production value isn't so great. But that basic synopsis of the story of, like, you know, you have a group of teenagers where they're being picked off, and there's also scenes of where there's girls with lots of boobs. There's always some kinds of, you know, there's always gratuitous sex scenes, usually in slasher films. And the actual thing at the core of that, you know, obviously the mass killer going around picking off a group of teenagers one by one, kind of similar to what I would say is in this as far as Schwarzenegger's story, but all the other things are that I attribute to what makes a slasher film, I feel like don't really are not really a part of this film. So I don't really consider it a slasher film when I think about it. Just because, like, obviously this was a very big budget movie. It, you know, it's all practical effects, which that's a similarity to slasher films, but it has a huge production value, and it, for the time, it had a very big budget. It's got major stars in it, and the story is so removed from the slasher genre because of the sci-fi scope of the movie. So it doesn't, for me, I don't really look at this as a slasher film the more I think about it. But who really gives a shit? This movie is so amazing. And this is one of my favorite Schwarzenegger movies. My favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie of all time, which I did a show on fairly recently, is Predator. That movie is just completely badass. I have seen that movie a bazillion times, never get sick of it. The Terminator is right up there with it. I love this movie to death. The other movie of Schwarzenegger that I really, really love, that is close second, or you know, it's hard to say which one is the best. But the other one, I would say, the other film is Conan the Barbarian. I absolutely love that movie. That movie's a masterpiece. Those three movies, Predator, Terminator, and Conan, are my favorite Schwarzenegger movies. I'm a huge Schwarzenegger fan. He's made a lot of great movies. But those three are my favorite. And the Terminator is, it's a masterpiece. And I did a big show last year on James Cameron, the director and writer of this film. And I think that this, again, it's always hard to pick your favorites, but I feel like this film is pretty much the best thing I think James Cameron's ever been involved with as a director. But I also feel probably the best movie he's ever done is Aliens, the sequel to Ridley Scott's classic. That movie, I think that movie is easily the greatest sequel ever made, Aliens. And I like that movie even more because it has even more of a horror element. But and I also, as a very 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 little kid, I saw that movie in the theater, and it scared the shit out of me. It gave me nightmares. So back in the early '80s, I mean Schwarzenegger and of course James Cameron, they were he just an unbelievable body of work. But the Terminator, again, it's hard to say what is the best, but it's an incredible movie, and it's yeah. I mean, what else can be said about it? And it's hard to believe this came out in 1984. This Blu-ray edition is just incredible, and of course, it stars Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor and Arnold Schwarzenegger. One of Linda Hamilton's character in this movie is one of the strongest like female leads in film history, and the whole premise of the story is super interesting. It is one of the most original stories. The transfer of this and the other star of this film that I really love is Michael Biehn. He is also in James Cameron's Aliens. He's one of my favorite character actors. He's always been one of my favorite character actors of all time, and this is his one of his best roles. He's also in Aliens, which is again he's so amazing in that movie too. So it's hard to say. And Aliens is probably my favorite James Cameron movie. And but I have to say that as a whole of I mean, because the Terminator, this film was a huge hit, and it really put James Cameron on the mark on the on the table as a force to be reckoned with. He This was his first movie, and he came out of the world of exploitation, of horror exploitation, exploitation. He came out of the Roger Corman school. Like his movie, I believe it's Piranha, was his debut, and that was under the tutelage and guidance of Roger Corman. And that movie is a pure like horror, low budget exploitation movie, and it's a classic. I'm a huge Roger Corman fan. I mean, he's like an icon in the world of exploitation, and he's responsible for for bringing so many amazing directors to the table. I mean, just unbelievable. Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, even George Lucas. I mean, just unbelievable. And James Cameron. And but because this movie, The Terminator, was so successful, it spawned a massive franchise. And to be honest, I'm not really a fan at all of any of the other movies. The second Terminator, when that came out, that one was a mega hit. That was one of the biggest, highest grossing movies of all time. And it's a good movie. I mean, the thing that was so innovative about Terminator 2 it was kind of the emergence, from a technological standpoint, the emergence of computer generated technology, and a lot of these things were used for films. And at that time, James Cameron's always been known to really be a real forward thinking filmmaker and kind of a pioneering filmmaker, and always taking the technology at the time and pushing it beyond its capability, and inventing new kinds of ways to create cinematography. Inventing all kinds of new technologies as far as new cameras and new ways that things can be shot through the digital format, live action, the live action format. Without a doubt, he is a pioneering figure with what technically a filmmaker can do. Always ahead of his time, even with the Avatar movies, which I like them. The Way of Water was a real awesome experience to see in the theater. But I have issues with the story and the movie itself. Like, it's good. It's definitely good, and it's a visual experience. The story and a lot of the things in it are just, I feel, are not on par with the technology that you're witnessing, but it's still a really good movie, and you still have to give James Cameron a tremendous amount of respect for what he's able to do and how far he's able to push those boundaries. And he was doing that. He's done that in virtually every film of his career, and especially with Terminator, which really catapulted that. But with as far as the Terminator franchise, I liked the second one. I thought, from a technological standpoint, obviously it was very, a real pioneering moment for film. But I also felt the dark aspects of the film, particularly around Schwarzenegger's character as the Terminator. They kind of turned him into this like hero figure. I mean, he comes from this place of where he's like an amoral, robot cyborg, and he's a killing machine where there is no emotions. He just has the objective to kill the people he's trained to kill, and that's it. And suddenly they gave him this like moral compass, and he kind of takes on this like hero figure. And I just felt that went against everything that they had started with his character. He's this hunter killer, and he doesn't have empathy. He doesn't have a moral compass. There's no such thing as morality. He's just a total fucking killing machine. But visually, that movie is really great. And Patrick Harris, who I believe is the other kind of the new Terminator that's introduced in that movie, is really great. He's pretty intense, and he's frightening, and he's. But as a whole, I was, not on board with everyone else at the time of how people really put that movie on a giant pedestal. And I think after that film, there's been about 5 other films that have come out in the franchise, maybe even more, and they're really, I think, kind of unwatchable and kind of terrible. Yeah, and I don't know what happened. Like, I just feel like too many cooks in the kitchen. I don't know what happened, but the franchise as a whole, I think it's the Terminator. In my opinion, the Terminator franchise as a whole is one of the worst franchises that exists. And I think that they've gotten so bad over the years that it almost has diminished uh, the stance of this movie or how good this movie is. It's so bad that it's just like it just feels like it's not as it diminishes the amazing quality of this movie in some way. I think like that happened for me with the Matrix movies. I think the first Matrix is one of the greatest, arguably, the greatest action science fiction movie ever made. But the other sequels, especially the third one, are just so horrendously bad that I feel like it almost diminishes the quality of such an iconic movie. You know, but again, the transfer of this movie is amazing. This is Blu-ray 4K. It's unbelievable the quality. This is one of the best quality Blu-rays I have, and it's got really great special features package. Phenomenal. 1984, one of the greatest 80s sci-fi movies of all time. Probably the best movie, or well, I did say Predator is my favorite Schwarzenegger movie, but right up there with it. one of the greatest roles by Schwarzenegger. This movie is every time I watch this movie too, I'm always like blown away by how dark this movie is and just how brutal and how violent this movie really is. And it's the suspense, the chase scenes, the action sequences are just spectacular. And again, this is a movie I have seen countless times and I never get sick of it. And it's one of those movies like the minute I'm watching it, I'm hooked and I have to watch it all the way through. I can't just watch, 10 minutes of it and put it away or whatever. So, but 1984 Terminator, get if you've never seen it on Blu-ray 4K, I highly recommend this edition. It's like anything else, unlike anything else that I've ever seen. So, thanks again. This is Jason Dean, and we will see you next time. Peace.